YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Buddha back in the building, and we're looking at some more unit tier lists. I've decided to continue going down the list because I got a couple comments that were saying, yo, where is this unit? Where is my favorite unit? How is this unit not in the top tier? And I figured we would just keep going because obviously the unit is in here somewhere. We're just going to have to find it. Keep in mind that this is all opinion, although it is the opinion of people who have everything in the game, everything available to them in regards to testing certain units in specific situations, quote unquote maxing their potential with all available resources. So you got to keep that in mind. One external skill from an arc may change a character's performance drastically, which could affect their overall score in this tier list in particular. But you already know I love to hear your thoughts as we go through this. Drop it in the comments if you agree or disagree, and hopefully we will get to some of the characters that were questioned in my last video. In today's video we're gonna go from 8.9, so technically from 9 to 8, and look at each of these units. It's their summarized notes and their ratings based on different categories in the game. So one character that was brought up is the first character we are going to look at. That is Kohaku, sitting right under Merity. She's got an 8.9, right? She attacks with the earth style element. Her main role is physical damage per second. Secondary role is as a breaker. For general use, they give her an 8.8, high difficulty 8.5. Ideal usage, she does cross into the 9.1, and then arena, she's sitting at an 8.5. She is collab limited, so keep that in mind. You won't be able to grab her if you weren't around for the Dr. Stone banner unless they do a third rerun. There is a PDPS guide that they have included, so you can follow that link if you want to learn more specifics about Kohaku. And here are the summarized notes. Crazy fast earth DPS, that's why she is a fan favorite. Her skill 1 shreds through waves. She also has decent break values. Does want Trishula for resistant enemies or tower. Her buffs are nice, but don't change too much. She's still a fast burst unit who struggles in longer fights, right? I think when we're talking about characters taking on end game content, a lot of units kind of fall short when you're not clearing waves in less than 5 seconds. Kohaku looks incredible in multi-wave stages because of what it says, that she shreds through waves. But when you're taking on a long-term fight, then you got to consider SCT charge time, their sustainability, how long can they last. And I think those are where she just falls shy of some of our top tier units that we looked at in the last video. Next up, we're looking at Advocate of God Lily. She's got the rating 8.8. She attacks with the light and dark element. Main role is as a mage. She can have a secondary role as a physical type damage dealer as well. For general usage, they give her an 8.8, high difficulty 8.7. Ideal usage, she actually gets a 9.2. You can see the note here. This takes into account having the Lily Matter UR arc. She does cross into that, what I consider top tier, if she has her arc available. And in arena, she only gets an 8.2, so that does take her ranking down considerably. She's a DOH semi-limited unit. Her rerun banner did just drop today, actually after maintenance. I highly suggest skipping. The notes has a little more build variance than OG Lily. AOG Lily has a few extra buffs and has higher skill damage on top of that. Very good when you need a light or dark mage. The thing is, you don't really need mages anymore. With characters like Alice, you can easily cheese any characters resistant to physical damage. But if you don't have Alice and you do need a mage, you got Lily. It looks like she's actually going to be our best mage in this 8.9 to 8 ranking. Next up is another character that I know was brought up in the last video, and that is Tsukasa Shishio. They're giving him an overall ranking of 8.8. He fights with the dark element. Main role as a breaker, secondary role as a bruiser. I know he does tank very well. General usage 8.5, high difficulty in 8.3. 8.9 if you've built him ideally, and a 9.7 in Arena. So that's a very, very, very high ranking in Arena. I know Crip speaks very highly. He was running Tsukasa at one point just because I think he smacks so hard. Collab unit, sadly, again, there is a standard PDPS guide on him. Notes tanky breaker with decent damage too. Tsukasa is a solid choice for Arena or against dark weak enemies, especially when breaking is needed. Is a bit slow clearing against normal waves, having a severely lacking hit count for a true DPS option. People don't consider that. When you're looking at a character, don't just look at their damage cap potential. You also need to consider how many hits that character is getting in. A character like Alice, who only has a damage cap of 9,999, but does 20 hits in one attack, is going to have that higher damage potential than Tsukasa, who might have a damage cap of, what is it, like 17,999 on crits. I'm totally speaking out of turn on that one, but my point is he has a higher damage cap, but only does 3 hits. Your damage output is severely decreased in that sense. So that sounds like one of the reasons he doesn't rank as high as some of these other high tier PDPS units that we've seen. Next up, they got the boy Chrome. Yes, I think every single one of the collab units that wasn't mentioned in my last video was brought up. You can see that they're just sitting under 9, so these are still incredible units, don't get me wrong. Anywhere from 8 to a 9 ranking, you're still talking top tier, you're still talking characters that can take you through the end game, be excellent in PvP. It's just that they lack some other aspects to them that are more well-rounded, I think, from the characters we were looking at from a 9 to 10 ranking. But looking at Chrome, he's got that 8.8. He uses fire and thunder attacks. His main role is as a stealer. His secondary role is as both a PDPS and mage. He's got equal capability in both of those. 8.7 for general usage, 8.6 for high difficulty, 9.5 for ideal usage. That's his rating as a farming unit. He is considered a top tier farming unit, of course, but only an 8 when it comes to PvP. He's a collab limited unit, of course. High difficulty usage, they have a resource for that. And looking at notes, Chrome is a fantastic steal unit. His ability to steal at the start of waves means that you can use him in auto run and clear fast, not sacrificing speed to get extra drops. Aside from being a farm unit, his PDPS and science magic are also good, especially in longer fights. So definitely a solid unit. I believe he's a bit overrated, unpopular opinion maybe, but I don't disagree with his placement on this list. He is still an extremely good character, a standout character above the rest. I just prefer, Yashimaru as my farmer, just saying. Next up, we got Bayland, okay, sitting at an 8.8 overall rating. He's a neutral element, main role PDPS, and that's about it. I feel like you could put secondary role as a tank unit, courtesy of Tweak's description of how he built his Bayland as a tank. But for general usage, he's at an 8.8, high difficulty is at a 9, ideal usage is at a 9.1, but in Arena, he's only an 8.2, so that's what drags his rating down a bit. In PvE, you could tell, though, he is incredible, hovering in that 9 rating range. He's a DOH semi-limited unit. I believe his banner is or was up. I don't know if it went away yet, but he was another DOH unit that got rerun just recently in this 2nd year anniversary build-up. They've got a standard PDPS guide on him, and for notes, decent damage and very high SCT recovery with his paid gear. I hate that. Bayland is still a great unit to bring for a team heavily focused on PDPS. If you're wondering what that is, it's physical damage per second. That's what that stands for, which is most teams currently, right? His paid sword is very good. I hear his paid sword stands above the rest specifically for him. I despise that. If you've watched videos of me talking about it in the past, you know why. However, he is very good to just bring with any physical damage dealing team because his charisma does give everyone a plus 2,000 to their damage cap, which is very significant. Sitting at the same overall rating as him, we have Lagraboss. You know, we've got the boss Yoda himself. 8.8 overall rating, neutral plus rainbow for his elements. Main role is a mage, secondary role he can be a PDPS. For general usage he gets an 8.9, high difficulty gets an 8.5, ideal usage he crosses up into 9.1. However, his arena rating drags him down significantly and only a 6.5, very mid-tier in arena apparently. DOH semi-limited unit, and for notes, having the only neutral spell in the game that also doesn't have a damage cap is part of why Lagraboss is so great. He also provides some PDPS and has great coverage with his other spells. Sadly isn't used much for his charisma at the moment due to mages being fairly underwhelming. I'm not familiar with Lagraboss's actual charisma effect, but from the sound of it, it only affects your magic casters, which doesn't make much of a difference in today's meta. And we have another fan favorite, still sitting very high in the tier list, Sylvan Sorter Logia. Overall 8.7, he's an Earth-style attacker. His main role is as a debuffer, kind of like how we saw with V. This guy takes advantage of status ailments to deal a majority of his damage, which bleeds into his secondary role, PDPS. For general usage, he's only an 8.5, high difficulty 8.9, ideal usage he does have a 9.3, and for arena only a 7.4. I'd actually expect a little more from him, but I think if they mention it in the notes, it's because he's a little squishy compared to a lot of units nowadays. His availability, he is in the general pool, so you can pull him at any time, which is nice. I mean, ideally in PvE, he's got a 9.3, so super top tier when fully built out. So he's got a standard PDPS guide with him. And for notes, the OG Ailment Inflictor. Logia is great into enemies where he can inflict statuses. He also has dual wield in his tree and some decent damage. I think he only has a damage cap of 9,999. But I know if you're taking advantage of his status ailment build, which is probably why his ideal usage is so high, he can render, just like V, he can render high tier bosses useless by stunning them, blinding them, silencing them if they're magic casters, and all of the above, which is what can make him so useful if you've got him built right. Next up might get some flack because Blaze Blade Shin, I know there are a lot of Blaze Blade Shin fanboys. He does hit very hard in the right circumstances, but let's take a look. Overall, they give him an 8.6. He is fire and dark element. Main role PDPS, secondary role breaker. For general usage, he gets an 8.5. High difficulty, only an 8.1. For ideal usage, 8.7, but in arena, he is still a monster, sitting at a 9.4, simply due to his incredible arena compatibility on attack. He's one of the best PDPS on an attack squad, period. There's no questions asked about it. It seems that he is just a little underwhelming nowadays in PvE content. He's also in the general pool. Read notes. All attack, especially crit boosts you have, okay? Special boost is very good due to all the slayers built into BB Shin. If wearing clothes high boost is a very decent boost to damage and stats. And note, dual wield should be used to maximize damage, but isn't useful where he excels, which is arena. So keep that in mind. Eventually when I get to Super Gold 1, I would like to do an arena guide. I just want to prove to myself I can get and compete with the top league of arena before I go trying to give advice for it. But you'll see a lot of Blaze Blade Shin in that area because of how hard he hits. Absolute beast in PvP. Only having single wield makes him hit damage cap often, but he will always hit hard. Can't really use Trishula, so does struggle against enemies that resist both dark and fire. I don't really understand that statement, but I also don't have Blaze Blade Shin unless there's like a certain skill that really hinders him from using machine types, or just the fact that you have to give him dual wield and machine equip in order to make this strategy viable. Maybe that's why it's not ideal. But I do really like his gimmick where his original attack is of the fire element, but if the enemy has a lower resistance to dark, he will then convert his skill damage to that typing, which I think is a very cool mechanic that we've only really recently seen with Merity. She goes from neutral to thunder under the same circumstances, or similar circumstances. I think Merity's only converts to thunder if the enemy's completely weak. Next up is the OG Lily, an overall rating of 8.4. She also utilizes light and dark for her elements. Main role just as a mage. For general usage, she has an 8.5, high difficulty 8.3. Ideal, she gets up to an 8.9, which is impressive, and in arena only a 7.7. She's a DOH semi-limited unit as well. And for notes, OG Lily is all in on her magic and does so very well. Her ability to split her magic damage means she doesn't hit the damage cap as easily and provides higher damage than most mages. She is not severely outclassed by AOG Lily and is a good mage if you don't have any of the top tiers. For those who aren't aware, Lily and AOG Lily are pretty much the only two magic casters to have a similar effect of dual wield built into their magic spells, right? So instead of dealing one magic hit count per spell, it gets split into two, each with a 60% damage output, in effect raising her damage output to 120% theoretically. But the thing is, if you can give her the buffs and the multipliers that she needs, she can then easily cap on both magic hits in that sense. That's what makes Lily and AOG Lily stand out as magic casters, is that one ability we haven't seen with any other magic casters as of yet. So when it discusses her ability to split her magic damage, that's what that means. Next up we have an older collab character, Millum Nava from the Slime collab. Overall rating of an 8.3. Element is dark. Main role is actually a PDPS, and secondary role is as a breaker. General usage, we've got 8.3. High difficulty, only a 7.7. Ideally, an 8.5. And in arena, 8.4. So solid, right, for your lower top tier units. But nice to see she can still hold her own. Like I said, she is a collab unit. They do have a standard PDPS guide on her. And for notes, Millum is surprisingly tanky and can pack a real punch. She is still solid in the arena and can also be a good dark damage dealer. Pretty basic, pretty simple. That sounds like the only thing is that she's a little tanky. She's got good PDPS. She's dark element. She just probably doesn't quite reach the marks that some of the higher tier characters do. Next up, we got Zykes, right? Little bad boy right here. But an overall rating of 8.2. He is a rainbow element attacker. I know he's got 3 different elements built into his skills. Main role is actually as a breaker, DPS/tanky build used for steel farming, mage build used for arena. Okay, I'd like to see that described more, but we'll see what the notes say. Secondary role is as a stealer. General usage 7.6, high difficulty 8.2. Ideally, they give him a 9.2. Still the greatest breaker of this game, even with the release of Merity. This also takes into account his steal abilities, which are useful. So there's the declaration right there. Zykes still holds the crown as the best breaker. So don't sleep on him in that sense. But in arena, he drops down to a 7.7. He is a DOH semi-limited unit. Zykes is a great unit in multiple areas. He has a steal, which isn't the best, but is usable if needed. He can go mage in arena to be a pain for the enemy. His PDPS build is okay. He is one of the best breakers currently, so if breaking a boss is needed, he's a great unit to have. I know there are some bosses that you're going to benefit more often than not if you're able to break their bars faster. So it sounds like in those situations, Zykes still excels, which is why ideally he can rank up to 9.2. Next up is Rolland. Man, it is sad to see such a dominating presence in Last Cloudia kind of sit at the lower tier of the 8s, but he does have an overall of 8.2. He's a light element damager. Main role PDPS, secondary role healer. General use, they give him an 8.2. High difficulty, they give him an 8. Ideally, they give him an 8.3. And in arena, an 8.4. So pretty consistent 8-ish rating across the board. He's a DOH semi-limited unit. Skill guide, they have a standard PDPS, but it mentions there are other builds for Roland. I know he can be a pretty good hybrid, bringing a decent charisma. Roland is a jack of all trades, but master of none. He's still a functional light DPS, and if you make him tanky, he can spam, heal, and keep others alive. So just as the concept of jack of all trades, he's good in all areas, but not great in any specific one, which in this game, you kind of want to build characters to be excellent at one role and then form your team of these specific roles to get the best outcome in most battles. So Roland isn't going to be bringing the best of any certain role in that sense. Next up, we still got the beast representing Dil Mordo, my favorite character in design, right up there with DB Ray. Overall, though, of an 8.1, element is fire, main role is just physical type damage dealing. General usage 7.5, high difficulty is a 7. Ideally, he can jump up to an 8.6, and then in arena, he's still decent at an 8.6. DOH semi-limited unit, they have a DPS guide on him. Once the god of arena, he is still very powerful there. He can also clear waves pretty quickly and has some good SC saves. He's aged a bit, but still a solid unit overall. I imagine his reign of PvP was probably overtaken by Shin, BB Shin, when he was released. But still good to know Dil Mordo is viable. I consider an 8.6 still very viable. So I fully intend to build him out whenever that presents itself, whenever that opportunity presents itself. Second to last, looking at Tinkley, the Diva. Rating is a flat 8 overall. She attacks with the light element. Main role is as a buffer. Secondary role is as support. General use, they give her a 7. High difficulty, 8.5. Ideally, they give her an 8.5. In arena, though, she gets a disgusting 3. You do get her from the general pool, so she's always available. For notes, wonderful support unit in the general pool. Her offensive buffing and defensive buffing capabilities are very useful and make her very worthwhile if you are lacking other support units, aka Swimsuit Tinkley or Spirit Maiden Tyria. And finally, we're looking at Rimuru Tempest. So Rimuru, the second slime collab character, does just sneak into this bottom of the 8s, sitting at an overall flat 8 rating. He is a rainbow style unit. Main role as a mage. Secondary role is actually as a healer. For general use, 7.8. High difficulty, 7.2. Ideal usage, he crosses up to 8.2. And in arena, an 8.2 as well. Also a collab limited unit, so we're not seeing that return. We're not seeing this character return in anytime soon. For notes, solid rainbow mage. Great for covering most of your bases and also has a built-in heal. Has some very nice stats as well as good special. He's a decent option, right? So now that we're crossing into this 8 out of 10 range, these are going to be decent units, but they're definitely outshined by a large majority of units we've looked at above. Okay, guys, we're getting into some dicey territory. I know there are a lot of fan favorites, Kohaku, BB Shin in this list that aren't considered the top of the top, the cream of the crop. But they're still very, very, very good. Tier lists are so difficult to make. I don't know if I would ever attempt to make one since I don't have all of these characters at my disposal. I can't use them all and determine how I feel about them. So I'm relying on those who have everything in the game making these tier lists to make a judgment call on. But what did you think? Would you rearrange any characters? Looking at my top tier unit video versus this one, would you make any swaps based on personal experience or merit? I want to know what your thoughts are so we can discuss, we can talk, because this is a very general tier list when it comes to looking at the notes. There aren't any specifics that are giving us the determining number to these rankings, just a general sense of how these units are functioning, how the people rating these units are using them. And that's what's great about this game is there are so many ways to use these characters. Like I said, I know Tweaks uses Bayland as one of his main tanking units from time to time, which isn't even considered in this tier list, so that could change your impression of the character. So that's why I'm interested to hear your thoughts. But we've looked at now characters from 10 to 9, and now from 8.9 to 8. And if you guys want, I'll keep going down the list in case there are characters you're wondering about that I haven't brought up yet. And you're like, how the heck haven't you talked about him? It's because they're somewhere on this list. We just don't know exactly where yet. But that's it. That's all I got. Not much else to say. There's the verdict. Currently, snapshot April 8th, 2021. This is how these characters are perceived by our Discord moderators, veteran helpers, veterans of the game, currently making this tier list. So, okay, I'm rambling. I need to get to editing. So, y'all know what I say. Work hard, play harder. See you in the next video.